Elmhurst has a rich history of varied architecture, both old and new, and in its early years, the city hosted the projects of architects of both local and international renown. Let's explore the Elmhurst works of Walter Burley Griffin, Mies van der Rohe, Frank Lloyd Wright, Herman V. von Holst, R. Harold Zook, and E. Norman Brydges. I'm Dan Lund, Curator of Collections at the Elmhurst History Museum, and you're watching Elmhurst History in Focus. By far the most famous homegrown architect that Elmhurst has to offer, Walter Burley Griffin was born in Maywood and moved to Elmhurst with his family as a teenager. Upon becoming an architect of the Prairie School, he designed a half-dozen buildings in Elmhurst, including homes at 281 Arlington, 248 Arlington, and 296 Elm, the latter which was unfortunately demolished in 2002. In addition to residential projects, Griffin also designed the clubhouse for the Elmhurst Golf Club and the stables for the Wilder estate. He made drawings for a new plant for the Elmhurst Electric Light and Power Company while his father was on their board of directors, though it was never built. Outside of Elmhurst, more than 100 homes across the Midwest are attributed to Walter Burley Griffin's design. Griffin would achieve international fame when he won a contest to design the Australian capital city of Canberra in 1913. Griffin's one-time employer, Frank Lloyd Wright, also left a mark on Elmhurst's architectural landscape with the F.B. Henderson House at 301 South Kenilworth. Built in 1901 for local businessman Frank Henderson, the Prairie-style house is notable for being the product of the Wright-Tomlinson Partnership, a short-lived arrangement that would prove to be the only time in Wright's career that he ever shared a practice. After almost a dozen owners in its century-plus history, the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy acquired an easement on the 301 South Kenilworth property in 2019 to preserve the residence for the future. Although not as well known as Griffin or Wright, H.V. von Holst was a prominent early 20th century architect based in Chicago, who was best known for helming Wright's Oak Park practice after Wright left for Europe in 1909. After being contracted by Commonwealth Edison to design various structures in the Chicago area, von Holst's contribution to Elmhurst is the commercial building at 122 South York, originally built in 1929 for the Public Service Company of Northern Illinois. It has been a restaurant since the 1960s, most famously as the Carriage House and the Heidelberg Rathskeller. He is also responsible for the design of the electrical substation at 135 East Villette Street. Among the architects at Wright's practice during von Holst's stewardship was Marion Mahoney, who handled most of the design work during that period in conjunction with Walter Burley Griffin. The two would marry in 1911. Elmhurst also hosts a home designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, a towering figure in modern 20th century architecture. Although better known for his influential skyscrapers like the Chicago Federal Center, Mies designed 3 residential dwellings in the United States, one of them for Robert Hall McCormick III at 299 Prospect in Elmhurst. The home was eventually acquired by Elmhurst Mayor Ray Fick, who later sold the home to the Elmhurst Fine Arts and Civic Center Foundation in 1991. 3 years later, the home was moved to Wilder Park to host the new Elmhurst Art Museum, which opened in 1997. The preservation of the structure remains a key facet of the museum's mission today. While only building a couple homes with Elmhurst addresses, Harold Zook was an important designer in the western suburbs. Trained at the Armour Institute, the predecessor of IIT, Zook built his home and studio in Hinsdale in 1924 and was commissioned for dozens of projects throughout Chicagoland. Zook was responsible for the designs of 231 Arlington, built in 1925, and 370 Webster in 1927. Zook's designs are known for their Cotswold cottage styling and undulating shingle patterns that were meant to resemble rustic thatched roofs. After being saved from demolition in 2005, Zook's home and studio is now a programming space for the Hinsdale Historical Society. Perhaps the architect to have the largest impact on Elmhurst was local resident E. Norman Brydges, a relatively uncelebrated yet prolific designer who was responsible for churches, schools, and homes all over the western suburbs. In Elmhurst alone, he was the architect of several early public school buildings, including Lincoln, Hawthorne, Roosevelt, Field, and Washington elementary schools. He was commissioned to design the Episcopal Church of Our Savior at 116 East Church Street and the First Congregational Church of Elmhurst at 235 South Kenilworth, and was also responsible for the 1936 neoclassical facade renovation at Wilder Mansion, which is still maintained today. Brydges kept his home at 145 Columbia before building a new home and studio of his own design at 255 West St. Charles Road. Of course, many more architects had a hand in building the Elmhurst we know today, and more still will contribute to the city's built environment in the future. But the legacies of these 6 men have lasted into a new century, and the buildings they designed continue to highlight the architectural diversity of Elmhurst. Thanks for joining us for this Elmhurst History webcast. For more information, please check out elmhursthistory.org.